Hello my dear friends, and welcome back to another Star Wars news update. Today we're going to be talking about Skeleton Crew, and make sure you stay to the end of the video because I'm going to be unveiling a Star Wars theory that Hera Syndulla already revealed to us in Star Wars Rebels what happens to the Bad Batch in the end. But first things first, Skeleton Crew is undoubtedly one of the most exciting upcoming Star Wars projects to date, and D23 Expo certainly did a great job of raising the intrigue levels in the fandom. And today my dear friends, we've got another update. Speaking at the Expo, Favreau was on hand to explain how Skeleton Crew creator Jon Watts pitched the idea for the show in the first place. And believe it or not, it was while the two of them were working on Spider-Man No Way Home. Jon Favreau notes that Watts had, quote, a really fully formed idea for the Star Wars series. He says, I've been lucky enough to be an actor in the 3 latest Spider-Man films, but I was working with Jon Watts, and I happened to mention to him the last time I was there that I'm working on The Mandalorian and how much fun it is, and if he'd ever want to collaborate. But when Favreau said this, what he had in mind was directing an episode, but Jon Watts replied, no, I've got a fully formed idea for what I want to do. And that's when he pitched Skeleton Crew, and Chris Ford was also on board. They recall Ford asking Watts, well, what is Skeleton Crew, what does it mean? And Watts replied, great question. It's simply a show about a group of kids who get lost in the Star Wars galaxy, and in his mind, he just knew the lead star had to be Jude Law. Now we're not too sure what character Jude Law plays, they're being very secretive, and we've only had one still for the show. We have Jude Law's character, with gatekeeper droids around him and the 4 kids in the background. As I've said before guys, the 4 main kids lost in space in this show are Force sensitives. And speaking of which, we need to talk about them, because while the other day in a different video I spoke about the TTA-TEL droids and how this show is going to be heavily influenced by the original trilogy, I zoomed in on the kids, and I know I'm not the first person to point this out, but one of the children on the far right is not human. They're all going to have their own personalities, but like other Star Wars fans, I assumed all 4 children were going to be human, but it's kind of great that they're not, because I think Star Wars needs more alien species as the protagonists. I mean, sure we have Ahsoka, Chewie and Grogu, but this character is going to bring their own dimension to this show, especially in terms of emotions. I mean, think about it. These are 4 kids trying to make their way home from the unknown regions. That's got to be really bloody scary. So it's going to be very character focused as we go on a brand new journey with these 4 characters. Now, as for what species this character is, they're almost certainly a blue Twi'lek, an Ortolan, or a new species altogether, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed that it's not a species we've come across before. I want some novelty to Star Wars, something very different, especially when it comes to the aliens. But I absolutely love that Star Wars is doing this. So now my dear Mandalorians, there is another clarification that needs to be made for the show. At the D23 Expo, comments made by Jon Watts got a lot of fans assuming that the show's wrapped filming, and even I fell for this when reliable outlets began covering it. But it's now been clarified by proper sources including MakingStarWars.net that Skeleton Crew is still filming and still has at least 2 months to go, so it's almost there but not quite yet my dear friends. And so now guys, let's talk about the Bad Batch. Over the last few weeks, we've been talking a lot about Star Wars Rebels, and the relevance of the show when it comes to the future of Mandalorian storytelling, the Ahsoka series, Mando Season 3, that kind of thing. But today we're going to step away from all things Mando to focus instead on the Bad Batch and what's going to happen to Clone Force 99 in the end. This is something the fandom has debated time and time again ever since last May. Are we going to see the Bad Batch die? What's going to happen to them later on? Or will the creatives on the show leave it open-ended when all is said and done? Now let me make a few things clear. Regardless of what happens to them, I don't think it's going to happen for a long time. The show is definitely going to be at least 4 or 5 seasons. So then comes the question of whether they'll make it into live action, and the consensus is Omega's going to be the only survivor, given that she doesn't have accelerated aging, and in the past I've even put forward the theory that the Book of Boba Fett Season 2, or a future season of The Mandalorian, will show us what happened to her by the time of the New Republic. But what about the other members? Right now we simply do not know, and there is so much story to be told before that's even on the table. But today, I want to explore a theory that Star Wars Rebels might have told us what happens to them, but we all missed it. Now remember guys, this is simply a theory. Yes, it's a bit of a stretch, but also keep in mind that Dave Filoni never includes things like throwaway lines. He's always made it clear that whether it's the Clone Wars, the Bad Batch, Rebels, or whatever, everything he puts in has a rhyme or reason to it, even if it means being explored at a future date. A great example of this is the Rebels epilogue with Ahsoka's white robes. Those are only going to be explained in the Ahsoka series, which will have been 5 years on from the release of the Season 4 finale. And with this in mind, today we're going to be looking at another aspect of Rebels which might have foretold the fate of the Bad Batch. It all took place in Rebels Season 2, Episode 15, The Call. The Ghost was in desperate need of fuel as well as Phoenix Cell. They find a mining guild asteroid operation and set out to steal the fuel while encountering mysterious space creatures that we know to be the Purrgil. These are the same creatures who 2 seasons later launch Ezra and Thrawn into hyperspace and into the unknown regions. Now Ezra and Hera have a chat about the creatures on the Ghost, and Ezra, who later forms a bond with the Purrgil, is astonished that such creatures exist out in deep space. Hera Syndulla, on the other hand, is not impressed. She absolutely hates the Purrgil and calls them dangerous creatures before revealing that she's lost more than one friend because of them. Now this was never explored in further detail, but it's very clear that whoever Hera lost to those creatures must have meant a great deal to her. She's in obvious distress bringing up the subject. Now given that the Bad Batch Season 1 gave us a younger Hera earlier in the timeline, and with the friendship they've established between her, Omega and the Bad Batch, Filoni might use that opportunity to give context to the line from Rebels. What if, in a future season of the Bad Batch, Hera and Clone Force 99 go on a mission together, and she witnesses a horrendous accident that causes some or maybe all of the Batch to die? The Purrgil are a mysterious creature that I think is very relevant right now, especially with the Ahsoka series on the horizon. Given Ahsoka's search for Ezra, the Space Worlds are probably going to also appear in live action, and if Lucasfilm want more interconnectivity and poetry between the shows, the Purrgil could also appear in the Bad Batch. Now don't get me wrong, it would be extremely tragic, and I personally hope it's not true. After all, Hera could have been talking about any friends of hers from Ryloth, and not necessarily from Clone Force 99, but whoever they were, they meant a lot to her. So that's pretty much the theory, guys. It's just one I've been kicking around my head for the last couple of weeks. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Do you think this is how the Bad Batch might potentially die? Could they have been the ones that Hera was talking about? I'd love to hear your thoughts and your theories about what's eventually going to happen to the Bad Batch. Share those in the comments down below, guys. Now I know this theory was a bit bleak, but luckily it's just that, a theory. I really do miss the Bad Batch, as I'm sure many of you do as well. Unfortunately, as we know, Season 2's been pushed back to January the 4th, but fortunately we do still have some Star Wars animation this year, with Tales of the Jedi on October the 26th, and 1 week from today, we've got the next big live-action Star Wars series, The Andor Show. I'm so excited. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and a huge welcome if you are. You can also find me on Twitter at StarWarsMeg1, and if you want more videos not found here on YouTube, then click the link down there in the description. But until the next one, my dear friends, may the Force be with you always. I'm Star Wars Meg. Have a good one.